Guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming and listening. Yeah, I recognise a lot of faces. I've been coming onto the stage now for, since the start, but there's obviously a lot of new faces too, so I won't bore you too much with about myself, but just very, very quickly, I have been a fisherman all my life. It's all I know. I don't really know anything else. I don't know anything about politics or religion or science, or I just know fishing. It's my lifelong love. And the net result of that was, all through my working years, I've done everything I can to work within fishing and fishing tackle and fisheries and lakes, etc. And now I have my dream job. I work for Nash Tackle, and I've been there nearly 12 years now. As well as that, I've also got a young family, which I'm over the moon with. You know, it's a dream come true for me. I've got two beautiful girls. So it might be a little bit of a misconceived idea that all I do is go fishing. Actually, that's not the case at all. I've got a very busy job, sometimes working 7 days a week, very long hours, and on top of that, I'm trying to balance family life. So my fishing time is probably very, very similar to most of you people here today, yeah? Holding down a job, maybe a young family, so it's quite limited. But I absolutely love it, and I try every opportunity to get out there and go fishing. I love little fish. I'll quite happily sit there all day long catching gudgeon or dace on a whip. I get the same buzz from doing that as catching very, very big fish. I like sea fishing, I like fly fishing, I like predator fishing, I like fishing. I just love the buzz of getting the bite, then the battle, and then seeing your prize in the bottom of the net. You know, that to me is everything about fishing. It's not just about big carp for me. In fact, I'd go as far as saying the fishing I probably like least is carp fishing. And when I say that, what I mean is sitting there behind static rods waiting for something to happen. I'm quite a restless kind of guy. I get bored very, very easily. So sitting there watching those things doing nothing for 24 hours or 2 days, I can't really think of anything worse. The result of that is I've changed my approach over the years. About 10 years ago, I kind of got caught in a bit of a rut. And that rut was I was fishing decent waters, you know, with big carp in them, and struggling, you know, like most people do. And I started to lose the love for it. I started to not enjoy it. You know, when you've worked all week and you drive to the lake and you get there, and then you fish Friday, Saturday, Sunday, go home Sunday, and you haven't caught anything, and you end up having a row with the missus, and then Monday morning you've got to go back to work, that ain't fun. There's nothing fun about that at all. So about 10 years ago, I changed my whole approach, and I started fishing much, much shorter sessions, being more realistic about what I was trying to achieve, and the net result is now every time I go fishing, I absolutely love it. And just because you fish shorter sessions, it doesn't mean that once in a while you might not catch some really special fish. This mirror here, for example, I caught it just before Christmas. He's the biggest fish in the lake, and I probably only fished on the water for 10 hours maximum. Same as this one, really horrific conditions, biggest common in the lake, again, one quick overnighter. So it doesn't always work like this. I don't always rock up and catch the biggest fish in the lake, but through a lot of motivation and determination and the want to always go out there and try, I do catch a few fish along the way. Last week, for example, I went out of volley, did a quick overnighter, had 7 fish, you know, in the middle of sort of February. Very, very, very cold conditions. The lake wasn't particularly small. And the reason I caught these fish is because with a little bit of thinking, trying to get into the head of the carp, for example, I walked around the lake and I found the biggest set of snags. And it wasn't particularly big. It was 3 or 4 overhanging trees, positioned my little citrus pop up next to them and caught a load of fish. Same for this one. This was Wednesday of this week. I was out filming with this gentleman here. Very, very excited thing that will appear in the future. And a really low-stocked central London river. And again, managed to catch one. And I'm just trying to highlight that it's February at the moment. It's bitter out there. It's horrible. And most people would rather sit and wait for May to come round and beautiful sunny days and that. But if you sit at home, guys, don't moan that you're not catching them. You know, you've got to get out there and keep trying and pushing yourself, because you just never know when you might get that bite. Same for this one. I drove up here yesterday evening. I didn't fish last night because I feel really rough actually at the moment, and I needed one decent night in sleep because I'm going to China this evening. But I stopped off at the river and I got my fix. And to me, it is a fix. It's I have to be on the bank. I have to try and do some angling, and it doesn't matter what that species is. As long as I get that bite, I get that bend in the rod, and I get that buzz, that's me. I'm happy. And then I can go back to work. Then I can go back to the family. Then I can get on with life. And as long as I keep going out there and angling, I'm a happy guy. I'm just going to quickly now run through 10 points that even after fishing for the best part of 25, 26, 27 years, I'm still very, very conscious of every time I go. And that is, before going to your session, do everything you can to find out about the water. How many fish are in there? How deep is it? Are there many other anglers fishing there? What bait might they like or dislike? And build up a bit of a picture before getting there, but never go with a preconceived idea. Don't, on the back of that data, think, right, that's it, I'm going to fish solid bags up against the island. Because when you get there, you still need to work hard to find the fish. Be organised. I go fishing with lots and lots of people, and it's one of the things that disappoints me. And that's a pretty strong word, but it's one of the things that disappoints me the most. People are not organised. They don't know where their head torch is. They forgot their polarised sunglasses. They forgot their bait. They forgot their rods. I haven't got a landing net. You know, I pride myself on, before going fishing, making sure all my gear's in order. I know where everything is. I'm stocked up on all the little bits I need. Because when you get there, I want to make the most of that session. Invest the time before you go getting your gear sorted. Energy. Without a doubt, you know, I haven't got a wonder rig. I haven't got a wonder bait. My biggest advantage is the amount of energy I put into my fishing. And I don't mean drinking 6 cans of Red Bull or a load of espressos from Starbucks. I mean getting some sleep beforehand and just putting 110% into it, man. You know, a lot of people would associate fishing with it being quite a chilled thing. Non-anglers I'm talking about. You know, they perceive us sitting there with a float rod and a float all day long, la-di-da, watching the birds fly by. It ain't like that for me. I put 110% in it. I'm constantly trying to catch another fish. Hunt them down, find them. You know, it goes back to what I was saying about the preconceived idea. When you get to the water, don't think because last week they were in an area, they're going to be there today. You need to work on that particular day to track the fish down. That could be showing fish, that could be coloured water, that could be bubblers. It could be a multitude of things. But before you make that cast, before you set up that bivvy, be as sure as you possibly can be in your head that there's some fish in front of you. Because the irony is, guys, if they ain't there, you can't catch them. Stealth. I think as carp anglers especially, this has gone right out the window. We turn up with a barrow, boom, 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 boom. We throw all the gear off. We get the bivvy up. We start malleting pegs in. We get rods out. We make loads and loads of casts. Come on, really, they've swum off. They've gone, you know. As carp anglers, we need to think more and more and more about approaching the water quietly, making the minimum number of casts. And if you can be more stealthy in your approach, I promise you, you will catch more fish. Bait. Bait for me has been a minefield all my life. It caused me many, many issues in regards to which one do I use. You know, and you walk into any tackle shop in the country and there's a plethora of bait aisles, you know, multitude of different baits. And what I learned is pick a bait or a couple of baits and just stick with it. Use something you're truly, truly confident in. For me, for the last 5 years, all I've used is citrus. You know, if I'm pop-up fishing and chucking baits, showing fish or an area where I believe the fish to be, I'm just using those citrus pop-ups. I don't always catch on them. I blank. But what I don't do now is blame the bait. I blame myself. It was my bad stealth. I didn't hunt them down properly. I didn't put 110% energy in. What it wasn't was the fault of the bait. Rigs, again, try not to overcomplicate things. I'm going to touch on this a little bit more in a second. The single most important things to me are make sure that hook is as sharp as it possibly can be and utilise that lead to your advantage. Get them to suck that rig in, prick on the sharp hook, and then get nailed on the heavy lead. And I'll touch on rigs a little bit more in a second. Determination, bit like energy really, but just keep on going. You might have done a 24-hour session, you might have done a 2-night session, you're coming to the end of it, you're a bit fed up now, a bit tired, you just want to go home. But guys, it can only take 2 minutes to get that bite. So if you're going to go fishing, just keep on plugging away, because you just never know. It might be that final move, it might be that change of a cast to a different area will bring you that bite. Maximise opportunities. When you've got something good going on, milk it. And by that I mean potentially ringing the boss and telling him you can't come in tomorrow because you're really, really ill. That might mean staying those extra few hours when you thought you were going to go home. That might mean not telling your mates, you know. If you've got a little spot going somewhere that you've invested your money, your bait into, sometimes, and I feel bad saying this, but you need to be a little bit selfish, especially if you're after that fish of your dreams. When you've got something good going, make the most of it. And finally, as I explained earlier, do it because you love it. Don't do it because you're desperately trying to catch a particularly big fish with a name, or you need to prove something to your mates, or make sure when you guys are going out there, you're going out there for the right reasons and to enjoy it. Just quickly, this is my number one tactic and method. This is my sawn-off rod. It's a tiny little 6-foot rod, and to many people, they perceive it as a child's rod, or in fact a toy. I can say without any conviction I've caught more big fish and more fish with this rod than any other rod I own, and that's from everywhere in the world really. There's a multitude of different ways you can use it. I fish slow sinking maggots an awful lot. I fish with the bread bomb. But yeah, it's a tiny little 6-foot rod. It allows me to creep around waters with minimal tackle and get into areas that other anglers probably wouldn't go. Just hold on to that, bruv, for us. Like as if you're going to play a fish. Like, that's it. And you can see it's very, very capable of landing big fish. I've had fish to over 25 kilos on it, and it's my number one weapon. That, Polaroid sunglasses and energy have caught me more fish than anything else. But I appreciate you can't always use such a tool. You know, you might be night fishing, it might be the depths of winter, and you can't really hunt them down by sight. In that situation, you need to use conventional carp rigs. And for me, it's difficult to have the best rig in the world, but if I had to say to you guys or advise you guys on one rig that I use more than every other rig, it's the chod rig. Definitely. And there's a lot of stigma about this rig. A lot of people say, choddies are for nods. You know, I've even seen people make hoodies and t-shirts with it on. But for me, it still keeps catching me fish time and time and time and time again. The reason I use it the most is because of the limited time I have. Because I'm turning up at venues I've never seen before. I have no idea what's out there. And instead of messing around trying to find a clear spot or a hard spot or a gap in the weed or any of those things, all I want to do is find carp. If I can find carp and I can get 3 of those out in that area as fast as possible, then I stand more chance of catching fish quickly. So my number one go-to rig anywhere is definitely the choddy. The only other thing I'll explain quickly to you about bait and rigs is this. To me, there's 2 clear scenarios you'll find yourself in as a fisherman with regards to catching carp. One is in front of you, you've got a large area of water. And in that area of water, there might already be carp, or you're trying to stop the carp as they're passing left to right, for example. In that situation, I take my citrus and a throwing stick, and I spread the baits out over a very large area. That area could be the size of where you guys are sitting now. It could be an acre, but I'm spreading the boilies around the water with a throwing stick. I'm trying to bring the fish in and getting them feeding. What those fish do in that situation, especially if there's any element of competition. Let's say, for example, there's 20 fish, 18 of them are doubles, 2 of them are 30-pounders. I believe there's an element of competition there, and the fish, they're not taking a bait necessarily like this and then going across the bottom of the lake to take another bait. I believe they're taking them potentially from this high, or maybe this high, or maybe even the big girls this high. You've got to remember they've got big mouths, and they're going around sucking and blowing things in. They can take things from a distance off the lake bed. In that situation, you need to utilise a rig that has an element of length to it. If your rig's too short, in many situations, those fish just won't be able to get the bait in their mouth. And I know from my own angling over the years, I've been in situations before where I've found the fish, I've fed them, I've sat there, they're boshing out all over me, and I'm getting liners, but I'm not getting the pickup, and I believe it's because my rigs were too short. And in that situation, I've truthfully, hand on heart, believe if I'd have lengthened those rigs and put some movement into it, I would have got the bite much quicker. Eventually, you get the bite, and it's the one stupid carp out there who's gone down and took the last bait in the area, but you've missed out masses and masses of opportunities. The other thing that's really important, guys, when fishing like this, spreading those baits over a large area, I believe, is to critically balance the bait. make sure that pop-up sinks down as slowly as possible onto the lake bed, or that wafter, or that snowman. So when that fish sucks it in, it goes into their mouth as easily as possible. The other situation I find myself in, guys, is when I find a really nice area. Might be a bed of lilies, might be a snag bush, and I'm going to bait with a mix of gear. You know, some hemp seeds, some flake boilies, a little bit of pellets, some sweet corn particle, whatever. And I'm just going to throw it in next to that spot, and I'm just going to position my rig down there. Or I'm using a bait boat, driving it out to a spot, dropping that bait down. Again, it's dropping down on an area. Maybe I'm using the big boat, driving around, finding an area, baiting, lowering a rig. But you get what I'm saying. I'm baiting in quite a tight area. It might be as tight as that, or it might be as tight as a stage, but there's bait all over the bottom. A bit like this. I'm not this guy, but some people, like your likes of your Kev Hewitts, your Tom Makers, there's a lot of good anglers that can spot at 120 yards and do exactly what I'm illustrating out. I can't do that, mate. I've got spots going here and here and here and here. But basically, you're baiting in a tight area. In that situation, you need to do something like this. You need to shorten that rig right down, potentially even shorter than that. And that's because the fish are feeding very different to how they are on this boilie spot. They're coming in and they're feeding very, very close to the bottom. They're not moving around everywhere, and they're having a munch, they're having a munch. I need them to pick that hook bait up and immediately come into contact with that lead. It's in this situation here, I'll personally never fish with a pop-up, I'll never fish with a wafter, I'll never fish with a snowman, because I genuinely believe if that bait is down there on the spot and two 10-pounders come in and they start feeding, the turbulence of the water as their tails are going and their pectoral fins are going and their gills are going, all that bait is flying here, there and everywhere. And your critically balanced rig will be doing the same. Potentially you'll spook the fish, or worst case scenario, you could even end up foul hooking them. And that's really my insight into rigs and baits. You know, out there, spreading bait around, choddies, citrus, big long hook links and Ronnie rigs, or if I'm baiting with some gear, I'll shorten that hook link down, big heavy lead, and catch him that way. And then finally, guys, we'll move on to Euro Banx. And at this point, this is a rarity. Where is he? Oh, come on, bruv. Now, Ollie, for years, has been saying, no, I'm not getting on the stage. No, bruv, you get on the stage. Like, I take photos. Come on, Ol. Ollie's going to come up with me. This geezer, not only is he a best pal, but he's an absolute legend, incredibly talented, not only with his photography, and we all know he takes the sickest photos, but as an angler, he can catch them. And every year we get the opportunity, don't we? It's only one time a year. We don't get to go back and do it again if we mess it up. It's one crack.
It's my hardest week's work of the year, without a doubt, chasing this mad fool around. But yeah, he's got enough energy for both of us, as you can see. So I consider myself lucky, really lucky. And occasionally I get to catch one as well.
So yeah, we get to go off and film Euro Banx, and it usually revolves around a dream, doesn't it? Basically, yeah. I'll have a multitude of venues in mind, and it might be I've seen a photo on Instagram, I've bumped into someone, but I'll have a dream.
So Lake Blair was your dream, wasn't it?
Lake Blair. How Lake Blair came about was, on YouTube, there was one video of Lake Blair, and it had been made by some Italians, and it was literally a montage of photos. You know, when they just fade into the next photo, and fade into the next photo, and that's all I had to go on, that video. And I watched that, and I said, we're going there, bruv. We're going there. And we did. So, yeah, it always revolves around a dream, doesn't it? And this year, bearing in mind it's Euro Banx, guys, it's not Urban Banx, it's just us fishing in Europe. This year, the dream was a Scandinavian pine forest, yeah, in the arse end of nowhere. There was no civilization anywhere near it, and I didn't even know what this water was. I just knew I wanted to go completely into the wilderness and fish for these beautiful carp, and the destination was Sweden.
We ended up in Sweden, and I think Sweden's quite well known for having really nice carp. So
it's probably not somewhere that's on the map like France or...
They've got quite a short fishing season, haven't they? Because it's cold, they can only fish for carp about 6 months of the year, so they don't grow massive, but they're really beautiful.
Really, really stunning fish. So we headed off, we went to Belgium first, didn't we?
So first stop was to meet Gio, and he was doing an interview for the Monkey Climber magazine. and I had to shoot a cover photo. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to have to do, but yeah.
Ended up getting my face painted. Really, really cool afternoon, and yeah, done this. Went back to we went and looked at a reserve. Again, a real wild reserve and that, but we went in May and the fish was spawning. And we knew this was a big risk, but having been to, for example, if you remember like the Rome episode, it was too hot, man. We went in July, and it's not only too hot for us to be battling all day for like 16-hour days fishing, day after day after day after day. It's too hot for the fish, so we picked May, didn't we? But
it's risky going in May, yeah. And the first lake that we turned up to, they were spawning. Yeah.
So I did this, and then we ended up going to a deeper lake where they weren't spawning. I did the night, and yeah, bagged a couple each.
There's only 2 koi in the lake.
Yeah.
And Alan's caught both of them.
I've had them both. When my daughter was born, when Maya, my first child, was born, like 6 months after, we went on a holiday to Belgium fishing, and I caught the first only koi in the lake, and then, now caught this one. So I love koi. I love an ornamental.
You don't really go to Belgium to catch koi, do you?
No. So we were there, very quick overnighter. Left there, drove through Belgium, Holland, Germany, got on a ferry from Germany to Denmark. And we arrived late that evening, didn't we?
So most people will do an overnighter. There's not many people that will do an overnighter in Denmark.
Yeah, so we drove all the way to Denmark, did a quick overnighter in Copenhagen, or just on the outskirts of Copenhagen. Big public water, 30, 35 acres in size. Again, very wild, very natural. And just like I was telling you earlier, the same rules apply, in all of our fishing. We've turned up there and we've done a lap. We're hunting, we're looking, we're searching. The sun was just setting. We're looking for those few little giveaway signs, and believe you me, they weren't lumping out, we found what we needed to see, and that was the odd roll or the weed. We found them in the weed, didn't we? Down one end, and we see them in there, and we're like, right, let's set up here for the night. And we were very, very blessed that by morning we'd managed to catch some nice fish.
Yeah, well, Alan had 2. I had a bit of a lie-in because it had been a long day driving. And I woke up to a bite, which was nice, and caught one from Denmark as well. So,
and that was kind of it's always our aim, isn't it? We just want to catch a fish from each country. Yeah, so we kind of ticked it off there.
Yeah, you don't want to be greedy. You're just fishing for a bite, and if you catch more than one, it's a bonus. So
we're not sitting there. People asked me earlier, I can't stress enough to you guys, what you see is what happened. There's no contriving of the story. There's no fixing things or making things up to make it. How it plays out is exactly how it happened.
And that's why it makes it so difficult, because you only get one opportunity, Yeah,
we can't go back to Denmark and get some more cutting shots, or we forgot to do this. It's one crack at it, that's it. And the next thing was a pretty good example of that. We left there and we were going to drive to Sweden. And all we had to do was dead simple. It was about an hour and a half to get to the lake we wanted to get to in Sweden. We had to drive across the sea, and there was a big toll bridge. And as we got to the sea, there was no toll bridge for us.
We, for some reason, the sat-nav had taken us to a ferry port instead. So we ended up getting a ferry. The problem was, as we went to get off it, Alan decided he was going to go and get some cash out of the cash machine.
The cash machine nicked the card. There was a crack down it, so it took fucking ages to give me the card back.
They emptied the ferry, and I had to drive off without him. And that was the last time I saw him for 3 hours.
So I was in Sweden on my own with one cracked credit card, a little pair of shorts, a little T-shirt, no phones, and I spent 3 hours walking around Sweden pleading with people to let me use their phone. No one would, and I thought the Swedish people were nice, but they thought I was weird, clearly. Shops, restaurants, cafes, bars, everywhere. Please, can I use your phone? The ladies at the ferry terminal were incredibly nice, and they let me at least, I'm going to say 50 times, 60 times borrow both their landlines and their mobiles to ring my numbers. Now, I know my numbers, so I'm keeping ringing. And it's ringing, and there's no answer. And it got
they weren't ringing.
No, they weren't ringing, because he would have answered straight away, but something wasn't right, but it was ringing. And it got to the point, it got to about 8:30 at night, and the sun was setting again, and these 2 ladies in the ferry terminal, they looked me in the eyes, and she said, where are you going to sleep tonight? And I was homeless. Like, I had no one. I was a lost boy. They'd been saying to me previously things like, he can't be your friend. He must have deliberately left you here. No, he hasn't deliberately left me here. We've just got separated. And eventually I went and checked into a hotel. I didn't have any other option. And I went and sat on the bed, really feeling sorry for myself, really just wanted my mum. I felt like that little boy in the supermarket who'd lost their parents. And yeah, I looked across and there was a phone on the desk. I thought I'd try one more time. I don't know what was different, but I rung and, yeah, he answered straight away.
So, yeah, we had a bit of a delay, but actually I think that probably worked in our favour because we turned up quite late at this large public lake.
Yeah.
And the swims that we were going to fish, or the guy, Calla, who was fixing it for us, wanted us to fish, they were taken. So we ended up having to fish, well, pretty much the swim in the car park, didn't we?
But yeah, got up in the morning and caught some more nice fish. So Sweden was a tick in the box. I'd caught some nice fish from there. Drove up north, didn't we? Again, fishing some more wild lakes in Sweden. Really good, really lovely.
It's an amazing country.
Yeah.
I can't stress enough. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. I can't wait to go back again.
I think they've got like a carp society or like a rod license, like an EA kind of thing, and there's 1,000 members. Is that right? That's it. There's 1,000 official members, so there's potentially 1,500 people actually go carp fishing there, and we're talking hundreds and hundreds of lakes, completely untapped, full of carp. So it was a really cool adventure. We left there and we drove further across Sweden with our destination being a fish farm that's actually stocked Sweden. All of the fish in Sweden come from this fish farm.
And a lot of other fish across Europe as well. I mean, there's been fish stocked in the UK from the fish farm there as well. So
not in recent years. We're talking in like the 1930s, 1940s. This particular fish farm was very, very famous, and it was stocking the likes of Germany and Austria and Belgium, and even there is records going back to fish coming from there all the way to England.
So some of our famous old English carp are actually Swedish.
Potentially. This was a little pit stop. We found a park lake, and this was as urban as we could possibly find, wasn't it? It was stunning, but all around it was houses and pubs and stuff, but this is a Swedish park lake. There was certainly no burnt-out motors and, typical park lake scenes.
And that's an interesting story as well, because we met a guy who'd actually stocked the lake 15 years earlier. It had never been stocked with carp, apart from a little bucket of dying carp that he'd put in 15 years earlier, and those fish had grown to be
pretty special carp, man. And I ended up catching two very, very quickly. We were only there an hour, weren't we? Caught two very, very quickly, and yeah, look at that, man. He came down. Someone made a quick phone call, and he said, "You got to come down. Remember those fish you stocked all those years ago? Come down." And it was a really special moment, man. So we left there, and then we went to the Dream, and this is what I wanted Euro Banx to be. I wanted to go somewhere like this. Basically, I know there isn't grizzly bears there, but it was like that. There was big moose and like massive birds of prey, and it was just bliss, utter bliss.
When you live in somewhere like the UK where it's busy, it's very hard to escape noise and people and the hustle and bustle. But that place, the only noise was the wind in the trees, literally, nothing else.
Yeah, so it was heaven, absolute heaven. And yeah, again, we caught some really, really impressive carp from there too. We didn't want to leave, did we? We were only there one quick night.
18 hours we were there. And the aim for me was just to catch one fish. I did catch a couple. I didn't expect to catch one like that. I mean, that was a real bonus.
Spectacular.
Yeah, I feel privileged, for sure.
We left there and we drove down south through Sweden, got on another ferry, and this time we entered Poland in Gdansk, so north of Poland, and we drove straight into the capital city, which is Warsaw. And one of our friends who's in the Polish team, he, through blood, sweat and tears, managed to convince royalty over there. This is the Royal Baths. This is their summer house, and there's a number of lakes on the estate. He managed to convince them that us two should be allowed to go fishing on there. And he had to speak to the police, the local authorities, you name it. But
it's like fishing in Buckingham Palace, pretty much.
Exactly like that. Exactly like. And I've tried, by the way. The Buckingham Palace ain't interested in me in there with a sawn off. So big up the Polish for allowing us. And it was amazing, wasn't it? We had one quick night.
They would only let us fish in darkness because it's a public park. We couldn't fish during the day. So we had from 10 o'clock at night until about 3 o'clock in the morning to catch a few carp. Completely
controlled by the police. All night long there's police going around on segways, and they hated the fact that we were allowed in there. They hated it, but we lauded it up for one night. I ordered pizza to our house, man. Like, we ordered pizza there. Like, we were in the flower beds, and it was just like, yeah.
You weren't supposed to walk on the flowers, were you?
I was walking all over a brickwork, climbing up shit, looking for carp, and it was just like, it was It was so cool, wasn't it? Like really, really cool. And
amazing buzz and a sleepless night.
And no sleep, completely no sleep whatsoever.
And these fish had never ever been fished for.
Nah,
They've been in there for 50 years, some of them 60 years, who knows.
But what was really interesting was when we went there in the daytime, we were feeding fish. I was taking a citrus boilie, biting it in half, and throwing half citrus boilies at 50-pounders. No joke. Boom, boom, boom. Everything you threw at them. There was grass carp, probably 35, 40 kilos, so 80, 90-pound grass carp, throwing bits of bread. Like, it was the pinnacle of cheating or easy fishing. We got there at 10 o'clock, it was rock hard. Those fish have been accustomed day in, day in, day in, day in to be fed in daylight hours. And as soon as it turned dark, it just was like flicking a light switch and they were not interested one little bit, were they?
It was like they went to sleep. So we thought we were going to fill our boots.
We thought we were going to just club them like one. It weren't quite like that, but it was cool.
It was really good. We caught a few nice ones.
We left there, we drove right down to the south of Poland to Rybnik, where we met up with the boys, Bastor and Nick, and we fished the jungle lake, didn't we? That's its name. That's what we named it.
It was like a mini rainbow a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like a flooded river valley full of little channels, bays, weed, snags, a real jungle. And it was good. The boys had a head start on us. They'd been there for 24 hours. No, 36 hours.
Yeah, they'd been there a couple of days before, so they'd both caught fish over 20 kilos, so 45, 46 pounders. Really, really cool place. I think one of the main reasons I wanted to go to Poland, I'm going to point this out quickly now. I go there every year for shows and work and stuff, but us English, we've got this big stereotypical image of Polish. Is there anyone Polish here? No. Okay, we've got this, tend to have this stereotypical persona, don't we, that if you're Polish, you eat carp, fact. You know, it's a bit like don't judge a book by its cover. And we wanted to go to Poland to show how beautiful the country is, how amazing the carp there are. And we actually interviewed one gentleman. He's been carp fishing for 55 years. He's never once eaten and killed a carp. He does it because he loves it, it's his passion. So I'm not saying that in England we don't have people potentially fishing our waters and eating carp. That happens, you know, I'm not denying that, but I think as a nation we should maybe not be so stereotypical all the time with regards to that.
And remember again that a lot of our prized English carp actually came from Poland.
Yeah.
So as you can see, you know, they look like
Bangers.
UK fish, don't they?
Bangers.
Really beautiful
All the
carp.
fish we caught in Poland were amazing. Okay, it's an untapped country again, isn't it, really? For the number of people that live there that go carp fishing. You can see another piece of heaven. And we left there and it was time to start heading home, wasn't it?
Yeah, back...
All the way back towards England, through Germany.
So we did another overnighter, turned up at dusk on the weediest park lake that I think I've ever fished. Anyway, it took me a couple of hours to find a spot for one rod. So I ended up just fishing one rod. And I was pretty confident, and you were pretty confident
really
as well.
Confident.
Yeah.
We, again, going back to my little 10-point things, we put the graft in. We spent hours locating that perfect area. I was using a diving torch. Basically, it's for underwater divers, and I was taping it onto a pole, and I was going around the weed, looking for those perfect spots. All of the fishing we did, 110% effort into it, because we've got a few hours to get that bite before we've got to move on again. But we woke up in a blank, didn't we?
And there was a reason for that.
Basically, we identified that down the other end of the lake, there was every fish in the lake spawning and spawning. But we'd done well until now to not stumble across more spawning fish. But this particular one, no chance. So Mark Vusen, legend is Mark, he took us to a very deep gravel pit, 10 metres in some places deep.
At least 10 metres deep, yeah.
The water temperature hadn't risen enough there to get the carp spawning. So we went there, and that's where we finished it. We finished it catching some German carp before heading all the way back to England, and as we do, we went raving. Got back to England, went to We Are Festival, had massive issues with security, got there on a Sunday evening, they stripped the van, so it's not like saying, oh, can you get out and can we strip search you? They took every item of fishing tackle out, spread it over 100 metres of ground, had 10 sniffer dogs, 25 security guards, going absolutely mental at us, found nothing, eventually let us in after an hour and a half. We got in, got to the front gates, no entry. We're on the guest list, you're not coming in. No one's coming in at all. And we've argued, and I was just done, mate. I've done 8 days travelling around Europe, God knows how many thousands of miles and sleepless nights, and I'm exhausted. I wanted to go party, but now I'm thinking, do you know what, let's just go home. But then, rung Reedy. Reedy looks after the show here, and rung Hatcher, and the boys come round, got us in, and we had a really sick night. So we ended it with a cool party.
It was the perfect way to end.
Perfect way to end
with
a
a
sick
party.
Yeah. And that's it, guys. I'm going to show you now the start. This is the start of Euro Banx. It comes out next Thursday.
First of all.
Hello mate, it's Dan. Just finished the camping edit, the rough cut. If you could you just try and listen to changes for me? Give it a while. You've got to get that
I keep having these reoccurring dreams of beautiful pine forests and big scaly carp.
Okay guys, tomorrow it will be history.
Mate, you just got the fish of most people's dreams. Yes, and she's mine. Yeah.
What does that say, man?
Don't dream your life, live your dream.
Boom!
That's what we're doing, man.
Living a dream. Number four. Mental boat rattle.